can you hear me properly, and can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so it's really great pleasure to introduce Paula Martins. And also it's very interesting because of basically her experience in different countries and in different setups and in different organizations. So I'm really looking forward. And also in this open lectures by the City Interaction Lab, the main idea is to share experiences. So if you have some ideas or you have been working with somebody who was working on the interface of architecture, urbanism and data science and maybe poetry, we are very open for that because we wanted to get your experiences of like this very multi-dimensional sphere. And thanks for joining. The floor is yours. Yeah.
So hello, thanks for joining us. So today I'm gonna talk about designing with focus on the collective. So I will go through some theoretical frameworks as well as some case studies, and completing it with some practice I had the chance to take part in with Architects Without Borders in Africa. So I would like to start by just bringing up some thoughts, quotes by Jane Jacobs. And she stated, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. So I strongly believe that it's important to think not just about the economical resources, for example, when we are planning on acting from whatever field of study we are acting from, to understand the territory, and not just in matters of, as I said, economic resources, but also the human resources, which at the end of the day are the ones that are leading the sustainability of these actions. Jane Jacobs, I think probably many of you know her, but she was an American-Canadian activist and journalist, and she had a lot of contributions. Among her books, the most famous one was The Death and Life of Great American Cities, which was published in 1961. And she brought up a lot of ideas about how cities should work, how the politics, economics, and the social causes should lead towards the city development, and mainly how to listen to the people, to the inhabitants, and as I said before, like the ones that at the end of the day are in that territory, like long term. There's this architect, Argentinian architect called Fermín Betervider. He was very famous because he tried to focus on the collective, and there's well, he said something like people will always want to know, and it is much needed, where is the entrance to their home, their closest group of neighbors, and they will want to confirm all this in their everyday life. And this is one of his probably his masterpiece of this social housing he preached for. And he won this competition in 1925. And it was a time when in Argentina, architects were very much conservative, and they were forgetting about people's needs. And Fermín Betervider was one of the pioneers of the modern movement in South America. And he created this building called Los Andes Collective. And you can see here how instead of like building like most of the plot, he actually put hierarchy in the public space. And this is a building that, I mean, these pictures are from nowadays. and even this area as well. And it's like this building is one of those examples that last in the long run, and people still love it how it is. Like it works very well as a community. I will talk a bit more in the next slide, but so as you can see, sorry, I just move this. As you can see, the total surface of the plot is 13 square meters, 13,000 square meters, and 60% of it is public space, which is shared among this little neighborhood. So it's an enclosed vicinity, and also the private spaces are flexible enough for people to design their own home. Talking about like sustainability, the preservation and maintenance of this building is pretty much in charge of the inhabitants of this collective. And they normally have like fairs where they buy and sell things among themselves. Maybe there's someone who needs a carpenter and they find it in their collective, or maybe someone who knows someone brings that person in, and it's all like self-managed. And also it's important that this building, because of its quality and how well it works as a whole, has been a lot of people has been wanting to move in here, and there's a very long list of like people waiting for years and years. And even when a unit becomes available, it's really hard to get it, because maybe a friend of someone who already lives there gets to know beforehand, and then eventually they manage. But yeah, that as I said, like I think it's a clear example of this that I am talking about, like the collective. So nowadays, and since some years ago, like there's this question of the informality. And here are some aerial views of different cities where we can see the contrast of this, and how, by again not caring about like the people who actually live in the territory, we have like probably like developers or like city planners who just care about, like, for example, building a tunnel, a highway, and it doesn't matter who are the people who have been living in that territory ever since. And well, those actions like normally lead to barriers. And here you can see some more images of these contrasts all around the world. And it is something that I believe it will just keep on happening, and especially after all these times we are living in. And so there's this other character. His name is Jorge Mario Jauregui. He's an Argentinian architect who moved to Brazil during one of our dictatorships in Argentina. And he has been working a lot with integration of the slums in Brazil, especially in Rio de Janeiro. And he said, the question is not just about inclusion. They are already part of the city, acknowledged or not. The problem consists of recognizing the right to participate in all the benefits urbanity provides to all citizens. So here you can see some of his projects. So Jorge works a lot with like public space, and he believes not just in building houses for people, but building city, like building the urban context where they live. And by doing that, it is quite proven that when one plans like an urban space with the qualities as anywhere else in the city, like regardless of being in the formal or the informal city, then like the community starts engaging more, like caring more about where they live and working and being empowered to towards their development. So there are these three aspects. So we can talk about like the physical aspect, which involves environmental, infrastructural, and urbanistic matters. And the social aspect, which involves the economic, the cultural, and the existential issues. And the ecological, actually Jorge Jauregui mentions three types of ecologies: the mental, the social, and the environmental ecology. And one of his most famous projects was this program called Favela Barrio, which means like slum neighborhood. So the main idea of this program is to link this formal and informal city, trying to do some sort of acupuncture, like try to knit and link both sides of the city to avoid like these barriers I was mentioning before, and that we can see in many places, even in Europe and in well-developed societies. As I said, so it's important to understand the structure of the place, the demands, the cross-disciplinary, because that is important. Sometimes it's not, normally when we work in the territory, we have several stakeholders, but also the people who make decisions on the territory should never be just architects or just economists or just, I don't know, developers. There should be like a cross-disciplinary framework. So an understanding like this urban scheme, like the city as a whole, like with all its flows and all the systems that work within the city. So say like the road system, like the infrastructure, the housing, the equipment, and the public spaces. These are other projects by him. So again, just connecting, finding ways to connect the informal and the formal city. And also the use of the color, for example, and the identity of each place. And yeah, as well, like the moment one plans a public space, then like the neighbors like would want to have like a nice facade, like do things to feel more homey, right? And it is also about the safety of all around the city that is plays an important role. And the moment that people are more engaged and they are more in touch with their neighbors and the collective again, then that makes the urban space a different atmosphere. And then talking about in practice from my own experience, as I said, I had the chance to take part in a workshop on urban development in Guinea-Bissau, which is in West Africa. And there we worked directly with the community. We had this assignment of putting into practice participatory methods with the community, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. We work with different target groups, for example, like with females of certain age, with men, with young men, with kids. And I think it is important, whichever the territory we work on, to understand a structure of like the bigger picture of what we are aiming to. So I understand that so to work in a territory, well, one should sit and plan ahead, and one should have like a diagnosis, a strategy, and action plans. And all these stages should be in parallel with the community, with the stakeholders that have a say or that inhabit that territory. So it's important as well to determine the what, the with and for, whom, why, and how. So what determine what needs to be done, not just the needs that the inhabitants say they need, but also detect what are the, so both the apparent needs, but also the actual needs that these people need. And understand the environmental and social impact that the whole involves. Also, it's important, as I said again, to identify all the stakeholders and involve them as much as possible, listen to them, and make them feel part of this. Even though, of course, in the end, like a project would not please everyone, but at least we should try. And the why, to justify the need and the present benefits and potentialities of the project, as well as the difficulties and problems that might arise. And the how. Well, this is, of course, like through community engagement and involving them in the different stages of the project. So these are some pictures of some activities we held in Guinea-Bissau. So, for example, this one was done with women. We were discussing about, we were working together with UNICEF. So they wanted to have new toilets in this community. So there was a whole like debate on how they should look like, where they should be placed, and who would take care of what in case they get involved in the building process, for example, and in the maintenance. So yeah, as maybe I'm a bit repetitive now, but like to detect their needs and also listen to their dreams and find a way to be able to make them real, and also with empowerment. So this other one was just to locate not only the toilets, the new toilets they were going to have, but also urban equipment around. And this one was more about how to deal like economy-wise, how to make this a sustainable development plan. So yeah, that was it. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have some questions, but maybe somebody else has before me, because yeah. Okay, I can start maybe, because I was wondering why this project of the Brazilian architect, I mean, of the project of the Jorge Mario Jerez, right? It's called urban acupuncture. Why?
Because he aims to work with the public spaces. So it is very common practice in South America, for example, that governments say, okay, we need to urbanize slum. Okay, then they just put money, like either they give people money or they just build houses elsewhere and they just move the people from there. Instead of really like detecting like what is it's really needed. And I mean, people don't always want to relocate just because, and they don't want to live in a, for example, in a unit that is for a family that is you know, 2 parents and 2 kids, because maybe it's just one single mom with 6 kids, or maybe they use different ways of living. So what Jorge Mario Jauregui does is to work like knitting, you know, like instead of like just saying, okay, I'm gonna move the whole population elsewhere, like and make boxes, you know. Well,
More
he works
actually,
a lot.
yeah, sorry. Do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know more how exactly he works? Does he have information about favela? Does he go there and just takes photos, or because it's really interesting how you can work in these conditions because you don't maybe have so much information.
Well, I think he was somehow lucky that I mean, it's through an initiative by the government of Rio de Janeiro. So they wanted to improve these conditions, and I suppose it's just like with a lot of like in relation with municipalities. So
Because I mean the same problem I saw also in some housing living, I mean which can be in any other country where people don't have even information about this. Do you know if there is, for example, for Brazil, you now openly can have some open data on the situation, I mean, with the social housing, or have you seen any of these resources? I just don't know politically whether it is right open or.
I don't know at the moment, but I knew that the Inter-American Bank of Development, they also had projects in like in slums in South America, I think in Latin America. So, but I don't know. I don't think they have like some open data at the moment, but I don't know. I can check.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because I know that people try to work with that also in, for example, right? You don't have to go to slums in Brazil. You can just go suburbs of Paris, and it can also be the same problem. And when I was trying to find some information about that, it was very difficult to find it usually. So yeah, but yeah. Also, thanks for mentioning Jane Jacobs. I thought that it was she was actually urbanist. I didn't know that she was activist, and I just recently read this work from her. From yeah, I don't know how did you get to know about her work? The one the one who you presented in the first. Maybe you can show the slides because some people missed in the beginning.
Yeah, of course.
And
Yeah, I know that, yeah, Jane Jacobs, even though she didn't study really urbanism, she got involved a lot as a journalist. I think she was quite involved with politics, and she got to learn a lot of things that were going on. And I think like pretty much she was like a very like committed citizen, you know, like being super involved in what was going on and what was wrong.
Yeah, yeah, because I remember she was writing there about the safeness of cities, that safety is something which we assume is like the street looks safe because it's in the big city, but in fact it's kind of it's not necessarily the case, right? And yeah, and I don't know if anyone also can recommend here also resources which would be along these lines, like the Jane Jacobs or the architects which you recommended, because these ones I didn't know about them before. And yeah, if you can name any other names of your favorite architects, who would be those people?
I think it's nice to add to mention Richard Sennett, which is not an urbanist but is a sociologist. Sorry, and yeah, he worked with Jane Jacobs So in some of his books, he mentioned Jane Jacobs, and it's nice to, I mean, to read how they imagine the space, the public space, the urban space generally, in an open way. So it's pretty nice to understand what he mean when he speak about an open town, open space, which is of course a public space, but is especially because a lot of things can happen, and this is a big value of that space. So yeah, I would like just to add him and his wife as well, which is Saskia Sassen, and she's very famous as well. So yeah, just to add few more connection to this.
And they were also working in the US, right? Or in
yeah. Yeah. Actually, we did a few, because I'm doing now my PhD in urban and regional planning, and we had in the PhD Richard Sennett in a seminar like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, and yeah, it was very. It was a great event. I think, I mean, in this kind of context as well, maybe sometimes people like them can participate, like they are happy to do that. So
yeah, it's also interesting to see how they interact. So thanks for mentioning that they were connected.
Thanks to you, and to Paula, of course, was great.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. I really liked also that you mentioned different aspects. Yes, but in the in this favela project, because it really touched me also a lot. Do you know other aspects of what he was trying to tackle there, like this, for example, the simple idea, which is very not costly, of coloring something, right? It already proves it. But did he also try some other things for this project? Like how much he will managed to achieve?
Well, I know he has been working a lot, even with housing. I mean, of course, at the end of the day, housing is needed. So he not just built like public spaces like parks and maybe a sports area. And I think he built other like public buildings as well, like school. I don't know, like, but even housing as well. So it's not like just like a matter of, just colors, but like the spaces creating, and even like this one as well. So this one, I think it was train tracks that crossed and divided like two sides of the city. And he proposed to like raise it and like, you know, bring the city again together.
Not to separate, you mean, in two pieces, you mean?
Yeah. Because that is something that happened quite a lot, like either train tracks or highways. When I lived in Australia, I was living in Sydney, and they had a lot of problems with a big company that wanted to build a tunnel. And of course, like when you go and drill and excavate like a whole, I don't know, path for the highway to go like underground. Of course, you affect a lot of people, and they were not caring about those people. And actually, one of the groups that was against this, they showed Jane Jacobs' documentary as well, like to raise awareness as well. Yeah. Yeah. They just wanted to build a tunnel with like, I don't remember how many lanes to be able to bring more people into the city. And that is not what you want nowadays. I mean,
yeah. Yes, the problem is also how you raise awareness of people, what it will lead to, right? Because sometimes you're like, okay, I will build more roads. It's good, right? But at the end.
To avoid congestions, but then
Yeah.
more people will come. I
Yeah.
mean, that is also proven, like the moment you add a lane, then you have more cars coming, like.
Yes. Yes,
But,
that's true. But in, for example, for your project which you were doing in Guinea, it was a local one, right? So you didn't touch the community in different cities. It was one particular city or village, even, right?
yeah, so the country is Guinea-Bissau, and the capital is Bissau. But we worked together with Benedetta in one community. We were a group of 13 women, 3 of whom were the facilitators. And then we were split in 2 groups. We were working with 2 communities in the west, the east of Bissau. So very much inland towards Senegal and inland.
Yeah, but in general, so you also needed to construct something, or at the end you had time mostly to like just to collect data of what they want, and how was it at the end?
So this only took 2 weeks. So we mostly work with the community with this participatory methods. But yeah, I've heard of some projects moving forward as well. Bene, I don't know if you remember Isa.
Yeah, I think that we just took part to a process that UNICEF started time before. So our approach was, to learn in a practical way some participatory method, and finally we leave some proposal to UNICEF for new toilets and manage of water, because in Africa this is a big problem, so how they can manage and have access to the water. And we did some proposal for the school as well, because in that village the school had the important role. In the first picture we are just seeing the school, so they are inside, but of course they have a lot of problem because a lot of children, not so much space, different level of culture, different free time, because sometimes, I mean, the family works in a complex way in that village, in Africa in general. So
and also and also it was a thing that we couldn't really stay there like overnight. We stayed in an accommodation like quite far from there, but that was maybe a flaw of this how do you say, this activity, this workshop, because it would have been nice to be there like and see how they use the spaces throughout the days. And yes, Benedetta said like it was hard to carry out some activities because maybe they were working in the land, or like they were with the kids, and it was also hard to find like some sort of privacy as well when we needed to work with a particular group, for example, like the women in the village.
Because they were suggesting something different from what other groups may have suggested?
No, maybe because they just wanted, for example, of course, children were everywhere, and they, of course, wanted to join to all the activities. And then it happened that men were a bit like they wouldn't trust us that much. So when we were just working with the female, they wanted to know what we were saying to them or what they were saying.
Okay.
So that was a bit tricky, but yeah.
Wow.
But it was mostly to put in practice all these activities, all these methods to involve community.
Yeah.
The community.
Yeah. But in general, these methods, you mentioned several of them, but where you learned about them, you learned about them before, right? You came there and...
Yes, so Architects Without Borders have different practices you can do with them. So this one was called Challenging Practice Stage B, but the Stage A is about these methods. But I mean, I don't know. I personally learned some things at university, but not just in practice, you know, like, so this was really cool because you could actually go to a specific place and where they are willing to, you know, develop and work towards it and just put it in practice and see how it is, how it actually works. But I mean, you can of course like learn the methods that Architects Without Borders present, but also you can design your own. I mean, you can, as long as you understand like what you want to get out of it, or what's the purpose of it, and how you're gonna deal with it, then yeah, it's a I think it's a matter of planning and, like as I said before, like taking into account the people that the stakeholders and the people who actually have a say in the territory.
Yes, thank you so much. I don't know if anyone also has questions, because some people came a bit later, and as it will be available online if you missed something. Feel free to ask if you want, but otherwise, I don't know, Graf, you have the...
Hi.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So just a few suggestions, like there were discussions about Saskia Saskin and other such architects and urbanists and Jane Jacobs. In India, just giving a perspective of the Indian cities, because Brazil and India, they have quite a similar issues. So there's B.V. Doshi, Balakrishna Doshi, who's recently awarded the Pritzker Prize. He has developed a similar project in a city in central India, which is similar to the one that Paula presented. So there's one, and the other one would be Charles Correa, again, quite a famous architect. These are the few suggestions for everyone to just, read around and so on. So I'll just type his name, although B.V. Doshi happens to be a student and apprentice of Le Corbusier as well. And also was associated with Lou Icahn. I'll just type in these names for everyone. But my question to Paula here is, these methods of participatory involvement, were they institutionalized by the government? Like you suggested, there were initiatives by the government and the municipal local bodies. Were they also institutionalized through legislation?
No, I mean, the macro side of this was a development plan by the government of Guinea-Bissau, and through partnerships with UNICEF, UN Habitat, and eventually Architects Without Borders, they've been carrying out different plans, different activities. So this was just a workshop by Architects Without Borders. So they were the ones suggesting these methods and providing.
No, I mean to say, not your work in Architects Without Borders, but the first work that it presented. I'm forgetting the name of the architect, but the 1920s work. Yeah, and then after that in the favelas and the slums. So these methods were the institutionalized in the process of planning by the government through legislation or through judiciary. Or was it that they remained for a project only?
Well, this one, the case of the 1920s, 30s, Fermín Betervide, it was just like a social housing. So it wasn't, of course, involved in any sort of legislation and such. This I just like brought it up as a, as a collective approach. And talking about Jauregui, I suppose he did have, or he has had, some sort of legislation afterwards, because of course, when you do like this that he does, like acupuncture and such, of course you meet sites that are probably the use of the land is meant to be something else rather than a park or I don't know, a house, or, of course, then you have to change the legislation of the local legislation. But since it was like the frame of this was an initiative from the municipality of Rio de Janeiro, then I believe it was just the flow of it. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, I also was surprised by this one. There's a project which Gaurav asked about actually. I mean, it's very nice idea, and I know that in France there is one person who tried to design some kind of this community house in the old castle. They were these projects of attempts of that, and I don't know how much of the practices like, I don't know, description of these practices exist. So if you know any good book about this communal living, right, or like more philosophical reviews, it would be very interesting to know about them. Did he publish his work? Actually, do you know?
Actually, yes, but unfortunately, it's in Spanish. But I have his main book, so it's this one here. Well, I don't know if you can see it, but it's called Urban Articulation Strategies. So
okay.
But on his website, he does have things in English and even in French, I believe. I know he had a French architect living in one of these favelas for a while, and he was working with him. I don't know his name, but
yeah. So basically, we need to Google his name and favela. Or you mentioned that if you can indeed type the name of them.
I think his website is if you Google his name, you will find his website.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will do that. Okay. So, but in any case, we will have also the recording. So if you missed some part, we can we know where to find it, and I will send it to you also once it's available. And thanks again for joining for this lecture, Paula, and for your incredible work also with Benedetta. It's a really discovery for me. So thanks for sharing this, and stay in touch. We will get back to you with the new lectures also. Thanks again. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye. Yes,
bye-bye.
Yeah, well, this is very important. Yes, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Yes. Bye.